Up. Welcome back. We have a couple more presentations here in store for you. I hope you all are having a good time so far. I know I am, so thanks for hanging with me. Just another friendly reminder to throw questions in the Q&A section. We love it. We love questions, so throw them at us. And then again, we have a whole networking floor in the events drop down located like up there or whatever, generally up in this direction. Yeah, there's a whole networking floor. So if you want to break from presentations or want to network, whatever it may be, check it out. Yeah, and so we have our next presenter coming up right now. We have Willem Olding from Chainsafe. He does amazing work on our solutions in the Mina Rust implementation. And he enjoys juggling things such as balls, hoops, and decentralization versus scalability versus security, the classic trilemma. He's going to be talking about fairer airdrops and work that he's done into that. So I'm super excited for this, and I'd like to welcome Willem up to the stage.
Hello, am I here? It's all working?
Yep, you're here. We're all working.
Cool. Thanks for
the
the intro.
Yours. Yeah, absolutely. It's all.
Sweet. All right, let's get the slides. Let's do it. Chrome tab. Okay, how does it look to everyone? It's fine? Yep. Good. Okay, great. Yeah, morning, everyone. It's like quite early here. I'm calling in from Tasmania, Australia, and yeah, excited to be here. Thanks for coming to my session. And yeah, as mentioned, I'll be talking about kind of some work we did with solutions about airdrops, which like never ended up until now. So yeah. And as also mentioned, I'm here kind of repping the Chainsafe Solutions team. Currently, there's just 3 of us. And yeah, I've got to say, like, of all the jobs I've had, this is like by far my favorite one. It's really fantastic. So with this little team, and we work with people like internally and external teams as well, just doing like the kind of stuff that, you know, your developers probably don't have time for. So things around the protocol design or integrations, just like scoping things out, prototyping, designing crypto-economic things, and yeah, just stuff like that. So if there's any kind of work of that type that you kind of have been putting off and need to get done, yeah, definitely reach out and maybe we can help you out. And so, as I mentioned, there's currently just 3 of us. There's Belmar, head of solutions, Jagrit, a solutions engineer, and there's me. And I think like 2 out of 3 looking like pretty professional in this slide. But we're looking to expand the team like massively. So if you see any kind of job advertisements with like solutions engineer or R&D engineer, definitely like you should apply and come work with us. Okay, and so what I wanted to present on was, yeah, what we call like fairer airdrops. A bit of investigation we did. Not necessarily, it's not necessarily about fairer airdrops, but it's kind of about asking a question. What if you needed to like bootstrap a proof of stake currency without doing any kind of ICO, and you just wanted to airdrop the whole thing? Like, would that be possible? Could it be secure from the start? And what kind of like steps would you have to take and considerations? All right, and like, I guess an airdrop kind of comes down to like the idea of issuance, but it comes down to doing it like all in one go. Normal currencies, like issuance is like a fundamental property. So like in your like national fiat things, I mean, I don't actually know this for sure, but I'm pretty sure they're issued through like some kind of reserve bank lending to like commercial banks, which then extend loans to people. And I guess the money kind of makes it into the economy that way. If someone actually knows how that works, let me know. Bitcoin, though, much simpler. Like the issuance was entirely done through mining. So like every Bitcoin in existence was kind of like, you know, issued through this mining thing. But that took a long time. And that, again, doesn't really seem super feasible at the moment. And so some projects kind of ways of doing issuance, including airdrops, which is what we're going to talk about, or force it with free endless airdrop, or some other kind of creative means. But by far, like the most common thing that we're seeing is like the pre-sale, which I guess is like, you know, people just exchanging some other currency for this new currency, or ICO, the same, I guess, but more open. And so, as I mentioned, like we're asking the question, like, could you bootstrap a proof of stake chain economy without going through this like pre-sale ICO stage? Am I still here? Am I just stop talking into the void? It's weird not getting any kind of noise or feedback or anything.
Good. You're good. You're chilling.
Oh, sweet. Thank
Great
you.
stuff. Yep.
Okay. And so, like, what are some things to consider for proof of stake chain issuance? And like the key one is that the network has to be secure from the start. So you kind of accidentally issued like a controlling share to any one party. Kind of secondary to that, you want to limit the damage that any one single party can do on the market, for example. So if you were to distribute large chunks of your circulating supply to like people who are disinterested or actively hostile towards your project, they could do some damage that way. There are also the goals that, like, you know, the reason you're kickstarting this economy is because you want people to engage with it. So you want people who might be interested in, you know, building on this new system, or even just like being able to pay the fees to engage with dApps on it. You want to make sure that it reaches the wide number of people that are interested. And finally, you want to facilitate the ongoing issuance. So you're not going to issue probably all of the currency this way. You want it to be able to facilitate what's going to keep happening, which is people getting stake rewards and possibly inflation that way, or maybe just, you know, decaying issuance through stake rewards. And so thinking about like what's an airdrop if we like distill it down into its most like fundamental steps. And I kind of came up with these three steps that you probably can't break down much further. So the first step is a snapshot. So you want to capture some state of, it could be account balances, or it could be any other kind of state in one or more existing systems. And these systems could be like blockchains or cryptocurrencies, or actually they could be something totally different. You could be capturing, you know, the state of people's Twitter activity or anything like that. So there's actually really no limit to what you could snapshot. And I think we've seen some interesting things in the past, but I think also there's like a lot of space to explore here in the types of activity that you can capture in a snapshot. And so the second phase is kind of this like calculation phase. So you're taking the snapshot and applying some function to it to calculate how much every new account in this new system should be owed in this airdrop. And this is kind of like what's going to be like our main design space. Like this is where we can get really creative and kind of account for different things that will lead to the goals we set up in the first slides. And the final stage is the distribute or make claimable. So that's either like dropping the tokens in people's wallets or making it, you know, some way that they can go ahead and claim these in the new currency. And so each of these steps, there's kind of like, yeah, some things we can explore and play with in order to get what we want. So let's take a look at the first step. The main question is, where would we want a snapshot from? And so that's a stake, like a hammer and a stake, in case you didn't get that. So where would you snapshot from? It makes sense to snapshot from another proof of stake chain because likely there are, you know, actors in that network who both like know how to run a staking node and, you know, have the desire to do so. And so if we were airdropping to those people, chances are they'd be willing to move across and stake on our new chain. And there's also the case that we're not limited to a single location. I don't know if I've seen this happen before. I wasn't able to find an example, but there's no reason that you have to snapshot on Ethereum and then drop to a new chain, or a snapshot on Cosmos if you're deploying a new Cosmos zone. You can just do a whole bunch of them and reward people accordingly. And it would be cool to see an example of that one day. And so the second phase, the calculate phase, this is where things start to get like a bit more interesting. So what could we do in terms of calculating? Let's assume that we're snapshotting wallet balances. Oh, I think I forgot to mention that, like, in the snapshot phase, like, it's important that this is kept secret, right? Normally you would take a snapshot and then announce the fact that you're doing an airdrop and that the snapshot had already taken place to avoid any kind of gaming of the system. Okay, so say we captured wallet balances. How are we going to calculate what the proportional amount that each wallet should receive? So one way we could do it is make it actually proportional to the snapshot balance. So if you have 10 atoms, you will get 10 times some number of our new balance. Or the other way we could do it, I guess, is giving like an equal amount to each account. So if you had an account on Polkadot, each one of these gets 5 new tokens on the new network. And both of these have been done. I guess the equal amount's kind of similar to the Uniswap drop a little bit, although I guess it had the condition that you'd previously interacted with the DApp. But is there something else that we could do? And what would be the problems of each of the ones above? And so, like, there's a pretty clear problem that comes with proportional rewards or proportional drops, and we can kind of quantify this a little bit. So this plot shows all of the accounts on Ethereum basically broken down into 20 separate bins, and there's like an equal number of accounts in each bin, basically. So you could say that each of these is like a 5th percentile of the accounts. And then the y-axis is the mean balance in each of those accounts. So on the far left, you can see like these are all the accounts with a balance. Oh, it's a cockatoo. It just flew into my window. These are the balances with like a small number of ether between 0.099 and 0.11, and then all the way up to the higher end of people holding between 25 ether and like 2 million ether. And you can see that, like, if we take the mean of each of these bins, that like the upper 5th percentile like just dominates the entire thing. So if we were to airdrop proportionally, then the upper 5th percentile of ether accounts are going to dominate our new thing. And depending on how many people are in this top 5th percentile and what their motivations are, it doesn't necessarily seem like the way to have a healthy functioning economy. So like, I would imagine that a lot of these upper 5th percentile accounts are exchanges, or I guess you're just good old-fashioned whales. And so there's potential for them to kind of wreak havoc. And so taking some cues, I guess, from Gitcoin and the idea of quadratic funding, there's this notion of a quadratic airdrop. And so in a quadratic airdrop, instead of just distributing the new currency exactly proportionally, you kind of raise the snapshot amount to some exponent k between 0 and 1. And so if we take the extremes of this range, if k is 0, this means that it's an equal drop per account. So every account gets the same. Or if it's 1, this means we have the linear increase with balance. But we have this range in between, which we can play with. And so setting it to 0.5 would be like a square root roll-off, which I think is the same as the Gitcoin quadratic adjustment. But actually, we're free to play with this. And because you would already have snapshot the different balances, you can kind of adjust this parameter and see what impact that's going to have on the distribution across your snapshot. And so I guess just a quick visualization, although maybe this is like obvious, but like for different values of k, you get kind of a different roll-off as the snapshot balance increases. And you can kind of visualize it this way. And so effectively it has the effect of increasing the amount or the relative amount given to smaller accounts and decreasing the relative amount that would have been given to larger accounts compared with the linear model. Cool, okay. And so this becomes really interesting when we actually kind of visualize it on the plot I showed previously. So these are the different values, or some different values of k, and how they adjust the mean reward for each of the bins. So on the left is the same plot as before with k equals 1. But in the middle is k equals 0.5. And you can see that now, as I guess mentioned, on the far right, they've kind of been compressed. And on the left, they've been expanded. And it looks like a much kind of healthier distribution across the range of different wallet balances. And taking k to 0.25, you can see that we're approaching the kind of level thing. And so, yeah, because you would have access to this data, you would be free to kind of adjust this, and based on some requirements you might have, kind of figure out like what's a nice shape of curve that you'd be happy with for your distribution. Okay, and so that was kind of like the quadratic airdrop adjustment. But what other kinds of things might be useful? Remember that we're still following this goal of trying to bootstrap a proof of stake chain. And so it might make sense to give extra rewards to accounts that are already staking on the Snapshot chain, if it is indeed a proof of stake chain or chains. And it's reasonable to assume that they might stake on this new one, particularly if they're getting extra rewards from that. And so our airdrop strategy is kind of growing in its name, and it's now a quadratic stake-weighted airdrop. So in this model, the amount you receive in the drop is proportional to our kind of quadratic term from before, multiplied by this new factor, which would be the number of unstaked plus sigma times the number of staked divided by the total. And this adds a new parameter and something for us to play with. And so this new parameter sigma is the extra reward factor. So for example, sigma equals 5 would mean that for every item of the currency on the previous chain you held that was staked, you would receive 5 times more reward for that. And it's all adjusted still by the quadratic curve. And this strategy was used. I can't actually remember the name of the chain. I think it was either a Cosmos or a Polkadot one. But this idea of a kind of stake adjusted airdrop has been used in the past. And I mean, there's so many more different things that we could do in this calculate phase, but I mean, I'll just cover a couple of them. But by the end of this, we should now have a list of accounts that are eligible to receive a drop. We should have some amount per account. And this, just to clarify, like this should be totally off-chain. So, our snapshot was done on-chain, but we took the data off-chain and we did this entire kind of adjustment thing off-chain. But crucially, it should be publicly verifiable. There needs to be a way for people to also go and recapture the snapshot data. So you should have released the block height maybe, or some kind of other way for people to unambiguously find the data that you snapshot from. And then all of the calculation and the function that you applied to it should be made public as well. So people can also go ahead and apply the same function and check that they got the same thing and that you aren't injecting malicious airdrop balances in there to give extra to you or your friends or whatever your motives might be. And then there is the final phase, the distribute phase. And so how can we go about doing this? So if we're launching a brand new proof of stake chain, which was the goal, there's no need to kind of worry about this too much because you can bake the allocations directly into the Genesis block. And I think most of the kind of blockchain frameworks would have a way to do this, or certainly in Polkadot and Tendermint SDK. But there's kind of one consideration here, which is like, you don't actually know that all the things that you snapshot are actually live accounts, and you don't know that they're actually interested in receiving your new currency. So there's a possibility that like a huge chunk of your circulating supply could be kind of allocated to these inactive wallets, which would just be like a real shame, and it seems kind of unnecessary. And I guess like, yeah, it's just not a good way to kind of start off a whole beautiful fresh currency. Like I suppose people have a pretty good idea about which Bitcoins have been lost and are in locked wallets. But if you did get to start a whole new one from scratch, you wouldn't like to start with a whole bunch of it lost. And so one way to kind of work around this would be to have a registration period. So this would take place on chain somewhere. I guess it doesn't necessarily need to be in the chain that you're launching or the chain that you're snapshotting from. But I think either of those would probably be a smart choice. And yeah, participants would need to register by providing some kind of proof of ownership of an account, which the easiest way to do is just by providing their public key signed by the private key. And so this would be like a fixed term for registration. And after it closes, you would distribute the total airdrop allocation among the registered participants, ignoring those that didn't successfully register. So this seems like a good way to kind of like avoid this problem and make sure that the people who you're airdropping to are actually those that are interested. And so in the calculation phase, what you would be calculating is not necessarily the amount that each would receive, but I guess kind of a weighting per account. And then after the registration period, you would remove all of those that did not register and use the weights to allocate the airdrop allocation. And another kind of thing to consider in the distribute phase is that you don't just need to kind of give it to people for nothing. You can kind of make them work for it. And you can use that to influence, positive behavior that's going to help your network from the start. So some examples would be, you have to actually participate in voting and governance, for example, before you actually are eligible to receive your airdrop. Or maybe you receive some chunk of it for each time you vote. Another really interesting one is that you have to actually, participate in the staking. And you could actually have the airdrop rewards held in some kind of escrow and released as additional stake rewards. So all of those who were airdrop eligible, who then go on to become stakers, would, at least in the earliest parts of the network, would be receiving like these additional stake rewards from the airdrop escrow. And that seems like a really good way to kind of incentivize stakers to get in there early and make sure the network is secure as it can be, like right from the genesis. And so to kind of summarize our design space when coming up with a kind of fairer, safer airdrop, the first step is snapshot, and you've got to make sure you do it in secret because otherwise people can get in there and kind of manipulate the results. And you're not limited to capturing just balances from one chain. You can capture any kind of state on any number of chains or non-chains. Just, you've got a lot to work with there. Next, you want to calculate. And this design space is like pretty huge. And there's a lot of room for creativity. And it's important to consider that all of the decisions you make here are going to affect all of the accounts. But because you have the snapshot, you can actually see that effect that you're going to have and kind of make sure you manipulate it to get something that you want. You probably want to have a registration to ensure that your circulating supply doesn't end up uncirculating and lost. You can have incentives, and you can kind of make sure that people who are interested and joining the network do things that are useful to you to make it safe. And then finally, if all went well, you can kind of launch with this sound new economy without having to have an ICO. And so the name of our kind of strategy has kind of grown a bit over the few slides, but I think we would call it a quadratic stake-weighted registered stake drop, which I think has a pretty cool ring to it. Awesome. And I guess as I mentioned at the start, and probably every other Chainsafe person to present so far has mentioned, but we're hiring like a lot. And yeah, it's just the sweetest place to work. I couldn't recommend it highly enough. And in particular, yeah, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, or prototyping or research in general, maybe a job in the solutions team is for you. So yeah, be sure to check that out. If you want to hit me up, these are my handles. Probably Twitter's not the best, but Discord or Instagram, GitHub, feel free to reach out. And thanks for coming to my session.
Awesome. That was sweet, Willem. That was a great presentation. I love that. And it seems that a lot of people did, because we have a good amount of questions for you if you're willing to take on some of these.
No worries. I'll do my best.
Sweet. Okay. So the first one I'm going to throw at you is there a project that you know of that has exemplified the most fair airdrop to date? And then maybe hopefully they don't mind, if I add on a little part of that, is the definition of fair ambiguous? Is there a concrete definition of what fair means in this sense?
Oh, it's totally ambiguous and like totally subjective. Like, but it's a funny thing. Like, I guess you have a lot of power, right? If you're the one kind of like setting the parameters for an airdrop, it's like a pretty unusual position to be in. But no, I just called it a fair airdrop because I thought it sounded cool. It's not necessarily fair at all.
I mean, it sounds fair to me. But so then, is there a project that exemplifies fairness best in how they've done airdrop, like in your opinion?
Yeah. So obviously, like I tried to find all the examples of airdrops that had ever happened when I was doing this research originally. I think like in general, the bar was set pretty low, but people were in more recent times starting to get pretty creative. I probably won't drop in names of projects, but like, yeah, like the idea of doing a quadratic drop and of a stake drop kind of came from some projects launching on Cosmos, and I thought that was pretty cool. So that seems to be where the kind of innovation was happening.
Sweet. So if any of these, like, if you don't want to name drop, just we can move on to the next question. So
I was really kept them up the entire time.
Yeah. So the next question is, in your mind, did you view the ENS airdrop as a fair approach at rewarding early adapters? Like I said, if you don't want to comment on specific projects, we could go to other questions.
I don't even know if I'm familiar with that one. Is that like a really recent one?
I think it did happen recently. The Ethereum naming service, I think there was a relatively recent airdrop. I don't know the details of it though.
Yeah, I can't say I'm familiar with it, so it might have happened after I did the initial looking.
Yeah.
So I guess I can't really speak to that one, but yeah, I'll look into it.
That's fine. So then the next question we have is, what's a good real world metaphor or analogy for airdropping that illustrates the difference between a fair and unfair airdrop? Like, what does that mean, and what does that look like in other situations?
Yeah, so I guess like, yeah, as I mentioned, like the idea of fair is like pretty subjective, and I guess what we were really designing wasn't necessarily a fair airdrop, but like a safe and effective one, from the interests of the people trying to launch a new proof of stake thing. But an analogy for the real world, like maybe from economics or something like that, definitely not our current economic system. Gee, I don't know. That's like a really strange question. I like it. because like, does this stuff kind of happen in the real world? You know, like do currencies kind of get bootstrapped and like dropped? And like, I guess they must have done, right? Like, but
Yeah, like additional
right, someone like creates a whole new
currencies.
currency in the real world.
Yeah, that is interesting. I like how like a centralized currency might just do an initial distribution of their currency. Huh.
Although that it must have happened. So like, yeah,
Like it came from somewhere.
yeah, totally. Stimulus
Yeah.
checks by the US government. I guess it's a tricky thing, isn't it? Because like,
Yeah, US airdrop.
because you can't really do like a civil type of attack on things like that, because like the government has a pretty good idea of like who everyone is. So like, you know, it's not quite in the same space as the crypto ones, just because of like the dissociation between like actual individuals and accounts.
Well, cool. Thank you for that. Yeah, a good question to ponder for everyone.
These questions are awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
So then the next question is, are these approaches and solutions that you've talked about in your presentation, are these concepts that already existed or have been used, or is this stuff that you've kind of come up with in your own research?
Yeah, so definitely the quadratic airdrop has been used before, and the stake drop has been used before, and those are the kind of main two that we kind of latched onto, just because they're pretty cool ideas. And so like, yeah, I guess this presentation was less about like prescribing a thing, but more about like describing the design space and like where you can start fiddling with things. And so like, yeah, it was more of a kind of, you know, a rallying call, and like a, you know, let's start getting a bit more creative and interesting with drops. But yeah, like those two main things, I guess that I spoke about have both been used. I don't think they've been used together, but I think they've been used separately. But I could be wrong. It all happens so fast.
No, that's awesome stuff. And I think it's great to think about, because it really is important when you're designing a system. And if you desire it to be fair, it's definitely stuff you have to think about. So great work. I don't know if you're going to want to answer this one, and that's fine. But what's been the worst airdrop you've seen so far?
I think we've all seen the ones that just like drop to every Ethereum address. Like you just like check your wallet one day and there's just like 10,000 random things of some kind. And like, maybe not anymore because it's too expensive to do that. But like, I remember that kind of happening a bunch, and like, you know, they're still worthless. So like, it was obviously a very unsuccessful like airdrop. So it would have cost them like, you know, so much in gas to like launch a contract that has a balance in every account, and it's led to something worthless. So I think that's an example of like exactly the kind of thing that we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, my favorite part of that is that the number you picked was 10,000, which like just it'll go to $1. It will, I swear. So we have two more questions on here. So if you're participating in governance, like you said, earning your portion of the airdrop through like staking or participating in governance, does that mean that you'll be participating in a non-token based governance system in that point, or for staking, how would staking work pre-airdrop?
Yeah. So I think this would be, at least the way I've seen this done before, is that if you remember, like, actually no, I didn't have a slide for that, but you would receive some portion of it in advance, and then be able to receive the remainder of it from doing the incentive kind of tasks. And so yeah, like obviously, like if it's a stake drop, you have to be able to stake something to then receive the bonus as rewards. So you'd have to receive a chunk first, and presumably, yeah, if you're voting, it would be like weighted voting, and if you're staking, it's, you know, normal staking, and then you would receive, you know, kind of bonus that way. But you'd have to receive some originally for it to work. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that wasn't really clear, actually, was it? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it could be to where like a non-token based voting system rewards tokens. Like, I don't know. Maybe there's different avenues there. I don't know. But so we have one more question from Phil. So do you see many similarities of airdrops with traditional fundraising with VCs, angel investors, or IPOing? Are airdrops, if designed responsibly, a step in the right direction for advancing finance?
Gosh, definitely not my area of expertise. I don't even know what half of those things are. But like, yeah, I guess like, you know, we all kind of lived through the era of the ICO boom. Or maybe we all didn't, but like, I think a lot of us would have. And like, it seems like, yeah, people are really moving into different things these days. And it seems like the airdrop's kind of growing in popularity, at least. And like, to me, it feels like a step in the right direction, particularly for projects that don't necessarily need to raise funds. Like, I guess that was the funny thing about the ICOs is that, like, you know, you generally could make a token contract pretty cheaply. You'd get all your money and then you would start working on the project. Whereas I think like an airdrop's more appropriate for when you actually have kind of completed a project and then you're trying to just bootstrap the economy. To me, it seems like a step in the right direction, but yeah, I'm sure there would be like a pretty fun discussion to have around this, and maybe we can later in the conference floor.
Awesome. I think that's a great answer. I also think and certainly hope that it's a step in the right direction. I think so. Great stuff. Great presentation. Great answers. As always, thank you so much, Willem, for sharing your time. You do great work. We appreciate it and keep it up. And yeah, again, thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you. That was super fun. All right.
Sweet. See you later. Okay. We have, yeah, there we go. Willem's screen remains. So yeah, we have 2 more presentations today, and a reminder that we are going to continue networking and hanging out after. So please stay around, hang out, talk with us. I think we're pretty chill. Hang out, talk about presentations, whatever it is. Come hang with us. Another friendly reminder to use the Q&A section to ask your questions during presentations. We love questions, and I love the questions we've been getting. We've been getting some awesome questions. So yeah, keep it up, everybody. Again, we have up in the events drop down up here. We have the networking floor to where if you want to go network and talk to people, that's the place to do it. Otherwise, hang around here. And I will say, if you somehow haven't picked up on this up to this point, Chainsafe is hiring. We would love to have you. We need people. We're looking for more people, and we would love to have some great people, great talented people come and join. So yeah, if you're interested, ping any one of us. Feel free to reach out. And so our next presentation, we have Victor Liu from StakerDAO and Graham Tonkin from Stateless. Victor participated initially with a bunch of different stuff and he had like a Gov token for both on ETH and Tezos through StakerDAO, and then was elected to be part of the strategy committee. And then we have Graham, who is now he's former BD from StakerDAO, and then now he is the co-founder of Stateless Money. And we have him here right now. So awesome. I'll pass it off to you guys. I'm excited for this.
Hey guys, thanks for sticking around. Great, Victor's here with me as well. I'll go ahead and get started here. We're going to start by talking about Pint, the Polkadot Index Network token, and then Victor's going to pick it up and talk about how we were able to make Pint possible through the StakerDAO community treasury. So Pint, in short, is a on-chain index token for the Polkadot ecosystem. It allows someone to easily gain diversified exposure to some of the best Polkadot ecosystem projects. Here's a couple of links that you could follow and read a bit more about us. You could, of course, look into the GitHub repo directly as it is open source. So looking at this screen, it's obvious to everyone here that there are a ton of interesting and exciting things going on in the Polkadot ecosystem right now. The projects, the parachains, the companies that are building interesting things. There's really a plethora of them, and it's really exciting to see, especially if you're working in the space day to day and understand who is doing what. From an outsider's perspective, however, when we're looking at a screen like this with all of the cool projects being developed, it's an intimidating thing to look at. From an outside investor's perspective, looking at a list, for example, of the S&P 500 and trying to pick winners, that's a hard job, if not impossible. I think in traditional finance, most individuals have, or at least should, go to things like index funds to make more risk-adjusted and diversified investments. So for most people, the best idea is usually an index fund. Index funds aren't for everyone. They aren't for probably a lot of people on this call that are quite a bit more familiar with individual projects, their technical capabilities, and their ability to deliver the vision they want. But for the average person, I think it's safe to say that an index fund is the best way to invest in an ecosystem. And we believe that the Polkadot ecosystem is in a great position to have one to allow for newcomers to capture some of this value that's being created so early. And Pint, in short, is an index token. It's a fully backed on-chain token that has a curated set of assets behind it that governance chooses. So the governance will choose the which assets are included, as well as their allocations within this index. As mentioned, it's governed as a DAO. So there is a council that governs all of the parameters of the index directly and how it operates. It is fee-based, and there is a buyback and burn mechanism. So the buyback and burn mechanism, I'm sure we're all aware, if you are staking assets like Polkadot or any of these other parachain assets, you will get a small reward every so often to pay you back for staking those assets. What we've chosen to do instead with the assets that are staked within Pint is to aggregate those rewards and then use them to buy back Pint. Governance then decides what portion of those rewards will be burnt, in effect distributing those rewards through aggregation of value or consolidation, kind of like a share buyback rather than a dividend distribution. Governance then, of course, decides what percentage to keep as a fee for operating this product, because at the end of the day, Pint is intended to be a sovereign, self-sustaining DAO. So this treasury is going to be used to compensate the governors as well as community members who are working to ensure the best index product possible. Why do we need this? Well, number one, simplicity. For most people, the researching, holding, staking, all of these things are quite intimidating. So being able to recognize that the Polkadot ecosystem is quickly developing and there's a lot of interesting projects, the most simple way to get involved is sometimes the best. And especially if it's a diversified entry into the ecosystem. If somebody from the outside hears of one or two projects, they'll likely be too intimidated to look into the many other interesting projects. So they'll be consolidated into one or two of these tokens specifically. And then there will be other index or indices offered by exchanges and centralized service providers, but we feel that a on-chain, DeFi accessible, DeFi native index is the best idea for the ecosystem as well as the people involved. Having governance and management on-chain is incredibly valuable, as well as knowing that any assets held in the index are all managed on-chain as well, gives people, or should give people, a bit more insight into how things are being done, managed, and how the governance will evolve over time. So Pint is initially intended for at least two different entities. Of course, there's the average person that is excited about Polkadot, eager to capture some of this growth, but is unsure about the entire process behind it. Doing the due diligence into each protocol to determine if they're noise or value, to figure out how to buy and stake their assets, to choose a validator. All of these things I think are quite intimidating for some people. and they are probably or most definitely too busy to actually participate in the governance of these assets. So as the protocols distribute this governance token, most people I don't think are going to be able to stay up to date, especially in the long run with the governance progression of that protocol. So they simply don't care about it and can't stay active in governance. And then protocols, I think, will be quite into Pint as well, or index products on Polkadot, because they probably have a concerns community that is a bit technically limited by how their on-chain treasury works. They might be generating great revenue, have that treasury rising, and may have tens of or hundreds of millions of dollars sitting in a treasury in their own native token. That native token, of course, is incredibly volatile, and it's a central point of risk that communities are going to have to deal with. So we believe Pint will position itself nicely as a treasury reserve asset for a lot of these protocols, and communities may decide to take 1%, 2%, 3% of their native asset treasury, add them to the Pint index in return for greater diversified exposure. So protocols could reduce their risk slightly of holding 100% native asset treasury to have a slightly more diversified exposure to all of the other interesting projects in the ecosystem. Additionally, protocols will likely enjoy the investor type of people holding indices. For example, an index holder is typically a bit more long-term, less short-term speculative and looking for that price pump. They understand that the gains are much more diversified and spread out across the ecosystem rather than the short-term runs of individual tokens. And lastly, protocols that include their token in the index are also able to qualify for parachain lease offering financing far into the future. Once the Pint treasury is robust and generating substantial revenue, protocols included in the index will be able to actually apply for financing for a PLO, for example, or utilize those funds held by Pint. And if approved by governance, it could be a viable tool for long-term financing for these PLOs. So governance of any DAO is, of course, one of the most contentious points. I think we found, or I found personally, that having very active community governance gets quite tolling, and there's often a governance fatigue that sets in a lot of projects. So rather than have everybody involved in every decision-making process in Pint, we've decided to start with a consolidated council of 7 people. We have representatives from Akala, Chainsafe, Hashkey, Hypersphere Ventures, Parity, Polychain Capital, and Stateless Money. And so this council is coordinating its efforts to get Pint off the ground, get it launched. And then soon after that, we want to include as many community members in the governance of Pint as well. So we imagine that community members will be writing in proposals to change allocations, change structure, set up new types of parameters, for example, and governance for Pint. And this is where we want to change the 7-person council to include any community members that are actively participating. The second layer of governance after the council being the most active managers of Pint, is the Constituent Committee. This Constituent Committee is a rather passive layer to governance. It includes a representative from each asset that is held on the index, and this Constituent Committee is able to retain veto power over the council's actions. So if there is a proposal to do something that the majority of the Constituent Committee members don't like, they're able to veto that action. And the Constituent Committee is also able to nominate new council members. So the council grows with those that are supporting and acting as the constituents in the index want. And we've created governance like this to have not an adversarial approach, but ensuring that the assets that are included in the index are very much in control of the index themselves. They don't need to manage the day-to-day intricacies, but they are able to manage the council who does manage the day-to-day intricacies. So this is very much a index created for the average person who wants to gain exposure, but also for the assets that are actually included in there. So giving these protocols good control over the index that they could participate in and gain stability from. I didn't want to get into many of the technical aspects of how Pint works today because Matthias and Redwin of Chainsafe will actually be giving a more in-depth talk tomorrow about XCM and how we were able to utilize it in Pint to offer this product across parachains with a lot of different assets while being able to coordinate an on-chain product where anyone will be able to mint and redeem Pint natively in a trustless way. So now I'd like to introduce Victor from StakerDAO, and StakerDAO being the project that made all of this possible. Chainsafe and Stateless Money coordinated and built the Pint project, but StakerDAO and the community from StakerDAO were actually the financiers behind Pint, and we were able to make it happen with their work. So Victor, if I could invite you on now from the strategy committee to keep on going.
Sure. Thanks. Thank you, Graham. So now I will talk about StakerDAO, the cross-chain asset factory. Now go to the next slide. So the special thing about StakerDAO is that now we are in the process to be more decentralized, but also we are present in many different chains such as Algorand, Cosmos, Tezos, Ethereum, and Polkadot. So from my first experience actually by being a customer of StakerDAO, where Graham was the part of the business development team. So my first product was also an index product called Blend, which also consists of 4 different assets, which also includes Polkadot. So now to the next slide. So the way it works, how we came to this project. So Graham introduced a new kind of index product with Chainsafe. The way it works was basically that they propose the concept, how it works. So we, the staker token holder community, decided to vote whether we want to have this product in place, and we basically funded with our treasury to make sure to make this into a reality, because this is what we as a cross-chain community would like to have. And we also have roadmaps as this through the success of Blend and also Pint. We also decide to have a broader roadmap, what StakerDAO will do. Next slide. So for our roadmap, we decide that we have to continue to decentralize StakerDAO, which means that we need more members. So that means like the current strategy committee that we have has to be enlarged. That means we need more members and also subcommittees, which has different expertise. And also through the experience that we have by having index products, web product, we are planning to introduce new products as well, and as many new chains as they are now emerging through our StakerDAO incubator. Since we are now represented in many different chains, especially on 5, that's why it's very important that we need community representation, because the community, we have a lack, we cannot be an expert of every chain. That's why we need dedicated people like Graham, who is an expert in Polkadot, to make sure to inform us about the trends, what we have to build, what we can build on. And for all these 3 steps mentioned, we hope that we are able to increase the membership in our community and having more community member involved as well. So thank you, everyone. And if you have further questions, then ask me or Graham and join us for a pint.
Wow, great ending. I would love to join you for a pint. No, super awesome presentation. I mean, as a Chainsafer, I'm super stoked on, and someone that's active in the Polkadot ecosystem. This is all awesome. I'm super stoked on it. And we do have some questions for you guys if you guys have a moment. So the first one is, how far off is Pint away from participation in the parachain slot auctions?
So let's take a step back here and talk about kind of the long-term vision and how we're implementing Pint. This kind of goes into one of the questions as well. The Pint palettes and everything that's being developed today, the grand vision here is for anyone to come in and be able to manage their own sort of ETF or index-like token on chain. So theoretically, someone could start developing thematic indexes, such as a DeFi-based only DeFi native token on Polkadot to launch, or very specific groups of assets. So this is a vision that we're playing with in the long run. That would be a parachain that would allow for structured financial products to launch natively and be governed natively on Polkadot. That's quite a big thing to imagine. So we've decided to start it back with a much more scaled approach. And that is simply launching as our palette integrated on the back of another parachain. So it looks like we will integrate the Pint palette with Akala, and we will have a launch with Akala to do this natively within their parachain. So we won't be launching our own parachain per se, but we'll piggyback as an integrated palette on others until we've determined that there's significant interest for other structured products that we could then go and launch. To follow up on another question, Jimmy, if you don't mind me just going through them.
Please, go ahead.
Does Pint have plans for a Kasama variant? Short answer is yes. Like many different assets in the Polkadot space, there are wild cousins that will launch on Kasama. We believe first a launch on Mandela for all of the testing with project tokens will come first. We will likely have a Kasama cousin coming quite soon after that. The name we've been considering is Shot, because shots always come before pints. So we'll launch on Kasama as a Wild West testnet, just as it's intended for, with the goal then to launch in Q1 sometime on Polkadot as well, once a handful of parachains are integrated and XCMP is working well.
Awesome. I mean, they don't always have to come in pints.
True. Get them as you please. And someone said, where can you buy StakerDAO token? Yeah, go to CoinMarketCap and figure that one out for yourself. Pint is going to be a DeFi native token, so we're really focused only on dexes and to exist primarily where DeFi exists.
Awesome. That sounds super great. Amazing stuff that I know we're all... Oh, another question. In the long-term vision, does it mean that StakerDAO and Pint will offer a possibility to the community to build their own Pint index?
I'll speak for Victor here, but please do add in, Victor, if you'd like. I guess that's not even in the long term. Well, assuming Pint is live and people are able to create their own customizable indexes, then the answer to your question is yes. But in the short term, the answer to your question is already yes. I know the StakerDAO community is looking for interesting proposals to finance. So if you do have an idea, just head over to the community and understand what the willingness to accept your idea and to finance your idea is. So there is the possibility to have your idea financed by the StakerDAO community treasury if you find traction and are able to deliver a viable proposal to them. And for Michael, are there plans to bridge Pint to any EVM chains or as an ERC20? Yes, I think likely just how the ecosystem is evolving in general, that we will see many Polkadot assets go over to ERC20 assets and become accessible. So I think the viability of having Pint as a treasury reserve asset will likely expand to protocols on Ethereum as well, who might want to further diversify outside of what they could access today. And yeah, participate in the StakeODAO community. I think the best option is typically Discord. So head over to Discord, join the channel, and join us in the Pint discussion channel or any of the channels that you might be interested in.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. That was an amazing presentation. I hope everyone goes and participates and checks them out. It's all great stuff. So thank you guys for your time. We loved having you. And yeah, thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Jimmy, and thanks everyone for sticking around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. So, gonna just another reminder, QA, we love our questions. And then we have the networking tab. And after this, we're gonna be hanging out, chilling. Come hang, come network with us, do whatever we will do. Then just, yeah, come hang. And so our next presenter, he's all ready to go, is Dr. Hank Korth from Lehigh University, a professor of computer science and engineering, and the director of blockchain lab of Lehigh's blockchain lab at the Center for Financial Services. His previous work experience includes, he was the director of database research at Bell Labs. He was the vice president of Panasonic Technologies and was assistant professor at University of Texas at Austin. Since coming to Lehigh, he spent 7.5 years as the department chair and served as the co-director of the computer science and business department from 2012 to 2020, which just happens to be the program that I graduated from. He is the co-author of the leading database, or one of the leading database textbooks, Database System Concepts, which is currently in its 7th edition. He's a fellow at ACM and IEE. He is a member of Lehigh's Scalable Systems and Software Research Group, which I was a part of. And he currently focuses on blockchain systems and education. On a personal note, Professor Korth is one of the most intelligent and humble people that I know. And he has an endless list of puns, all sorts of jokes that never gets old. I know that I would not be where I am today without his help. And it is my honor and privilege to introduce him to you all. So thank you for being here, Professor Korth. The floor is yours.
Hey, Jimmy, thank you for all that. That's quite the introduction there. So I had put together a who am I slide. Who am I? You've got that already. Let me just roll on here. So what I want to talk to you all about today is looking ahead. I mean, every talk
your screen right now.
Pardon me?
We're not seeing your screen. I can't see your screen.
Okay. Oh, I did a share and it seems to have gone away. Okay, let me see what's happening here.
Sounds good.
Share. Oh, yeah. I see what happened. Google security didn't want to authorize it, and it's there.
Earlier on fire. Oh no, not yet.
Choose what to share. Still not getting it?
No, I'm not seeing it. But if you need, I can always pull up the slides as well.
Hey, you've got the slides, so we could do that while I try to.
Yeah.
It's
I'll work
one
on
of these
pulling that up.
stupid security things.
Okay, I'll pull those up at any time while you try and work through that, just in case.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to give this one more shot here while you're doing that. We'll see who wins.
I have mine ready to go.
Okay, why don't you just go with that, and I will blast my thing out of here. So you're going to share screen and show the slides? I'm not seeing them yet. Okay, no, almost.
Seeing my
You were
screen
there.
before?
Now I'm
Okay,
seeing
cool.
everything. All your secrets are up there. Okay, that's kind of overlaying oddly, but good enough. Pop ahead a couple. Yeah, we done that. Yeah, so go on to the next one. Good. Okay, you went ahead 2, back up 1. Okay, we got it. Good. Thanks for hanging in there. So I guess I'm between the shots and pints and happy hours. So that should be fun. So what I wanted to talk about today is something that's actually been in every talk. We're hiring. Well, from where are you going to hire? And obviously universities are one of the hunting grounds, but the question there is, what should we do? What are we doing? And who are we trying to teach? Well, I mean, obviously, looking at this crowd here, it's, developers, researchers, but I would contend that another important role for universities is blockchain education for all those other folks I list up there. I mean, all it takes is a quick look at some of the strange policies coming out of DC to realize that we really need people in government, in enterprise, even broadly among citizenship, who are truly literate on blockchain. But if you look at the developers that are really making a difference these days in blockchain, some of them have gotten there not bothering with the university education, which leads me to my next slide, which is one possible view here is one going back to an album I first listened to when I was about Jimmy's age, actually probably still just a tad bit older. And that is, do we really need education at all? And so moving on from that, then I can ask the question, so what place does a university really have in the blockchain world? Can we really provide the value that we need to for what we charge? And yeah, we charge more than a Bitcoin a year for a residential university, not cheap. And so next slide, please. What I'd like to do in this is not just tell you, what I'm doing here at Lehigh, what we think we might be doing in the future, but to make this a two-way discussion, a chance for me to hear a bit also about what you all think ought to be done in this space. And so, what we're doing today is far from the final answer. And my email address, it's on the title slide. I listed again. Really love to hear from you, not just in the questions, but also offline afterwards. And so if we go to the next slide, Jimmy, before I talk about the specifics, the issue of what to teach is it's a long story in computer science and a constant battle between the folks focused on that first job. Let's teach today's cool technology, which has been so many different things over the years. And then there's the fundamental traditional type folks who say, no, you should be teaching basic lasting concepts. Of course, the answer is you need a mix of those, but what's the right mix? What's the collection of concepts, facts versus experience doing things? And then doing what? You see lots of computer science where you see students doing coding, but more just for the sake of doing coding as opposed to really learning how to code, how to develop, how to think. And so we need to find this right balance between the immediate and practical and the basis for a career. And in all that, listen to lots of folks talking about education, and they forget that it's got to be fun. If you're going to be in a career for some 40, 50 years, and believe me, I know about that, you really need to enjoy it. And so showing the fun of doing all this stuff, and certainly in blockchain, I can't think of a more fun thing to be in. And that's got to be conveyed in any kind of reasonable education. And so next slide, please. What is blockchain? And if I talk to some of my colleagues, here in computer science, they think, well, it's just one more thing in computer science. But it's a lot more than that. Among all the various applications of computer science, blockchain's unique in its immediate impact on other disciplines. I mean, listen to the talks we heard today and we hear elsewhere in the blockchain world. Finance is always there in so many different ways. Certainly DeFi, central bank digital currencies, and then beyond the finance, things very quickly get to issues of privacy and governance, the whole idea of decentralization. And these are things that go beyond computer science concepts, yet they are immediate and fundamental things in blockchain. And we really then need to train not just computer scientists to do blockchain stuff, but train these finance professionals, policymakers, politicians, yes, even lawyers and journalists, so they avoid making some of the bad policies we've seen coming down the road. And so, next, please. There are some real challenges in trying to communicate blockchain technology to students. I think one of the biggest challenges is that it's not just teaching about computing systems, consensus, crypto, etc. But almost any public blockchain has embedded in it an economic ecosystem. The incentives, how people behave, believing that incentives cause people to do the right thing, but then having further punishments when they don't. This is the domain of economics class. And even there, the students who take a couple of courses in economics, they take macro and micro. What they really need probably is game theory. And that's considered a more advanced course. So we face this problem that to teach a blockchain course, we really have to bring in a whole pile of disciplines that we don't teach very well in the university. I mean, even math. What do we make everybody go through 3 calculus courses? Well, I start off with crypto, group theory, discrete mathematics, things that we don't teach. Actually, discrete math, we don't teach in our discrete math course. So it's a really challenging setting, but most definitely, as I've said. So if we could move ahead once again. What I'm going to be doing here is just start off by taking a stab at what we're doing. Not that this is the right thing, the definitive thing. In many ways, it's just the result of an evolution of several years of putting together a larger and larger blockchain program. But what we've got are a bunch of courses, and I'll talk a little bit about each one because I certainly want to get some feedback on what's in those. But then another aspect of what we do, and something I think is very important to that more practical side of education, is Capstone Projects. So all our computer science majors, we have a whole bunch of different programs, but at the end of it, spring junior year to fall senior year, they do a capstone project. And typically these are done with outside business partners where they are trying to solve a computer science problem in that enterprise. And we put together a bunch of those in the blockchain space. Jimmy's one of those students who did one of those. And so that's one way of getting some nice real-world training in the blockchain world. Another is various research projects and independent study projects. And I saw before I started talking here that one of my current master students and also a Chainsafe intern, Maxime, he's on here. Hey, hi, Maxime. And then another thing we have is a whole bunch of interdisciplinary collaboration. So outreach beyond the computer science, kind of the tech side of blockchain to folks, particularly in the business side of Lehigh. And so with that, let me move ahead and say a few words about the things we're doing. So in courses, we've got 3 courses now. And okay, so I listed our course numbers. You don't care about that, but the content. So that first one, CSE 242, is unapologetically computer science, an elective for computer science majors. There is nothing on applications, nothing on policy. It's crypto math. So it's cryptography from Caesar cipher to Diffie-Hellman, all packed into a fast-paced, several lectures. Then, cryptographic data structures, Merkle tree and friends. Then a lot of time on consensus. I mean, obviously proof of stake, proof of work, but also a review of the various approaches to message-based consensus. We start with the classic BFT going back to the paper by Lamport, then PBFT, Nancy Lynch's stuff, but then a survey of a number of cryptos chosen not because they're hyped, not because of their market cap, but because they have something interesting in the way they manage consensus. And, so after having obviously covered, Bitcoin and Ethereum, I mean, we talk a bit about Polkadot, Algorand, Mina, Solana, Stellar. Yeah, I got the Stellar cap here, and and a few others. In each case chosen not to cover all the details, but here's the key consensus tool. The idea being, if you're building a new blockchain de novo, how are you going to do consensus? You can copy something else, or you can look at the key techniques, the key algorithms, and the goals of showing that how do you show a consensus system is correct? So we talk about the formal foundations that come out of the distributed computing community, proofs of safety and liveness, and tie all of that in. And then, of course, there's coding. And there's a project writing smart contract in Solidity. And we have our own private proof of authority node for that, so we don't have to tangle with the testnet. And I can give them as much ETH as they want. We have students who love showing MetaMask and showing they have 1,000 ETH and making their friends think they're rich. But some have joked about trying to sell our private LU ETH, and I sure hope they don't do that. They'll get me in trouble. But that's the CS course. Then the next one, CSB, that's in Computer Science and Business 242. That's a course that has sort of just the minimum tech, body honest. And then after that, we talk about various applications, policy, and I bring in various outsiders, have a fun group of outsiders come in to talk. I've had the global CTO from Deloitte for blockchain. I've had folks from Citibank, Ethereum Classic Labs. Of course, I bring in my two students from the class of 2018 who run the Dolomite Decentralized Exchange, and they get to talk about their experience, and a whole bunch of others. We have a whole bunch of good friends and alums, and among our Lehigh alums is Kevin Worth, CEO of CoinDesk, and pre-COVID, he actually would drive out from New York, come to our class, and it was quite fun for students to get to see him. And then another course we're doing, I'm doing this one for the first time this fall. Lehigh has a Master of Science degree in financial engineering. And financial engineering had been mainly data analytics. The business dean realized that ought to be blockchain too. So I was asked to put together a course for them, and I'm doing that, taking advantage of their math background with financial system on this. You ought to know what it's about. But then a lot of time on financial applications, digital currencies, and policy issues, but a much deeper dive because these are actually finance students. And I'm quite amused teaching that course, I gotta tell you very honestly. So it's financial engineering. I was a math major, have a degree in CS. I've never taken an engineering degree. I've never taken a finance course, so no engineering course, no finance course, and I'm teaching a grad course in financial engineering. Perfect. Anyway, I go with the right side of things here. moving away from the teaching space, comments about things we're doing in research. And we have a bunch of research projects going on here. I don't need to read them to you. All the acronyms and buzzwords clearly familiar to most everyone here. But we're also working in a synergistic way with our colleagues here. So I'm part of a broader research lab that's focused on parallel and distributed computing. We go by the name Scalable Systems and Software Research Group. And working with folks there and with Maxime, who's listening now, we're looking at how to take advantage of modern computer architectures to speed up the generation of zero-knowledge proofs. Cool stuff and part of the synergy you can get in a university setting. In terms of synergies with business, I'm working with a professor at finance on issues in central bank digital currency policy, and working with some students looking at something that's kind of bridging in between those things, looking at how one could architect a governance mechanism to minimize the opportunities for various MEV exploits, and if they can't be avoided totally, make it possible to detect them even after the fact, either as part of validation or in a more government-driven thing like a CBDC for regulatory purposes. And the last thing I list here on data consistency. So this one goes way back. I told you I was old when I quoted Pink Floyd, but back in my earlier days of doing database research when I was at the University of Texas, we looked at the idea of database consistency across independently managed databases. Well, if you look at it slightly differently, think about consistency across independently managed chains, parachains, shards. Very similar issue, but some of the details, of course, are quite different. And so we're looking to bring some of our old-time database expertise into the blockchain realm. And then, Jimmy, if I can have the next slide, I'll say a bit about our undergraduate projects. We have lots of undergraduates doing capstone projects, have a couple of completed ones, one involving verifiable letters of reference, and some of the participants in that are on this call here. We also did a project to look to replace the on-campus currency. You may know most universities have some kind of dining dollars type thing. It's called Gold Plus Lehigh. So we did a project to replace that with a cryptocurrency. Lehigh is the Mountain Hawk, so we called it Hawkcoin. And we almost got it deployed. We outperformed their legacy system, but the university quickly went to their outside vendor and got a performance upgrade because I think they didn't want to bring in our blockchain system and maintain it internally after the students graduated. But it was fun anyway. And looking forward to the spring term, we are lining up a whole bunch of cool blockchain projects. I haven't finalized all of them yet. January still, a month and a bit off, but we are looking to have a couple of enterprise blockchain projects with a major database vendor working with Fabric. We're looking at working with a couple of blockchain development firms with some interesting projects there, possibly one in health, and then one that's a really cool social justice theme of using the blockchain to verify that farm workers get paid. The specific one in mind here is going to be Bitcoin. And so the idea then is that various fair trade organizations can look and see, hey, yeah, the workers really got paid. And with that, then hopefully, help ensure not only that they do get paid, but then that their produce is then marketable, creating the whole, virtual cycle there to, or virtuous cycle. I keep saying virtuous because I'm too computery, to create a nice financial ecosystem there. And then moving ahead again, Jimmy, Oh, wait, I missed, sorry, I missed something on the previous one. Sorry, my bad. One off here because I missed the undergrad independent projects and listed a couple that are going on now. I've got 8 students working with me in the spring on various independent projects. We're defining, a number of these are fun educational things for the students. Some are things that could certainly turn into research projects for students who stay on for a master's. And now to the next one, Jimmy. So I talked already about the fact that I'm working with folks in finance, that we've got courses there. And in the Center for Financial Services, they set up a blockchain lab. And I'm the blockchain guy, so I get to run that too. And on the business side, and trying to practice what I preach in terms of outreach, I've run a seminar series for business faculty, basically going through every discipline in our business college and letting them know that blockchain matters. Yes, it should be in your courses and certainly should be on your radar for research. And then moving ahead once again, Jimmy, that's where we are now at Lehigh. And as I said, this is just, a stab of, what to do in this space. Not the final word, looking for feedback. And I mean, the bigger question here is, are we really doing things to provide true value to students and move them into a constructive, fun career in the blockchain world? Or are we just another brick in the wall? And so I'll go ahead and take whatever questions there might be. And thanks for hanging in there this long.
Just a second here to come back on.
Yeah.
Okay, here I am.
Okay, now I'm
Awesome.
set up to see the Q&A myself as well. And
So,
I love this one. I see Pink Floyd sent in a question. Education is largely outdated. So how do we endeavor to keep the curriculum up? One of the things that I talked about is this trade-off between current technologies and concepts. And if you look at all my courses, there's one biggie missing, and that is a deep dive into the tools you need to use to code today in the blockchain space. And that's something we make up for with the independent projects, the capstones, and so on. And so that's the part that's current. The course stuff is more focused on the lasting. But more broadly in computer science, we have that problem big time. And we try to revise our courses, but of course you've got faculty who are focused on the research. It's a lesser priority, and it is a constant running battle. And then we have, shall we say, external enemies. Basic choice of programming language. Okay, we do Java. Please don't cringe. Why do we do Java? Well, the AP exam is in Java. And so unless we want to run 2 paths in, AP students and our own students, we're kind of constrained for making a more modern choice. So constant battle. We try. Jimmy's been through it. He can tell you whether we do a good job or not a whole lot better than I can. So I'll throw the question back to Jimmy.
gosh, it's coming back to me.
Okay, you can take the 5th on this one.
Yeah,
But I can't take your degree back.
No, that's mine now. I like
Okay,
to
we
think
can let
that I
that
earned
one. We'll take you off the hook there.
it. So yeah, we got a bunch of questions. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, good. So I'll move on down here. How do you bridge conversation concepts with individuals who don't have the prerequisite knowledge? Oh, yeah. I mean, there are lots of those, and that's a big problem. It wasn't too long ago, I was listening to on Sirius XM, some business station, and somebody was asking, which is better, Bitcoin or blockchain? I'm like, oh, I'm ready to just drive off the road into a Merkle tree or something. It is really hard to communicate this stuff because it is so different from most people's experience. And then you have folks like Mark Cuban and Elon Musk who seem to make things worse rather than better in a whole bunch of cases. But I mean, that's something in my more business-oriented undergraduate course. It's kind of the first thing I have them do. First paper they write, explain Bitcoin to your grandmother. And just to get students to think about how you take these ideas and relate them to everyday experience. And I've gotten some really amazing ones back, approaches I wouldn't have thought of myself. So I think my short answer to that question as a professor is listen to your students. Okay, so multidisciplinary bridges. I mentioned the bridges with finance. We've got quite a bit of that there. There's a professor in accounting I talked to who is very computing astute, and actually one of the independent study projects I'm planning to do this spring likely will involve him and looking at various issues of validating and presenting business data using ZK technology, so you can hide the raw data but still have in effect an audit. And approach to teaching changed over time. Well, we don't actually have a formal course in Web3. I mean, that's the stuff that gets taught hands-on in the capstone courses or in independent projects. So we're not actually teaching that. We have a web apps course. The web apps course is very Web 2, for better or for worse, but tools you definitely need to move into this space. And if I can ever get in place a true hardcore developer course, that's when I'll get to address your question, but do love the question. And MOOCs would be a wonderful thing. I mean, we obviously have a lot of video in the bank now, thanks to COVID. And I've been trying to run more of my classes flip classroom style, so the recordings of lecture are the assignment, and then we can just discuss in class. Now, going the MOOC route, love to do it, but I have to get the university to be willing to invest in professional production. As I've learned during COVID, being the presenter, the producer, and the guy watching the chat going on the side, especially when you have something like the Uniswap Airdrop happening in the middle of class, as some people will remember, makes for an experience. Yes, I expected a commission. I never got it. Doing something that's truly MOOC-like and professional is a next step, and I'd really like to sell my university on doing this. Chuck E. Cheese as a way to explain how I love this one. This is too good. Is using a Chuck E. Cheese coins, tickets, prizes a good way to explain ERC 20 versus ERC 721 to older students? That is phenomenal. I never thought of that one, but now I can never forget it. Thanks. And then is it difficult to entice students to take a post-secondary program? That's something that is a broader thing, just in terms of high school students going to college, and if they don't, I don't get to see them here. When I was running our Lehigh Unique Computer Science and Business program, which is a single degree, dually accredited, both CS and business, worked a lot with admissions. Yeah, we got a graduate there. And so I got to, high school students who at least go to a college info session are already with one foot in the door. But I really tried to sell the value add. And I think the value add is really the broad immersion you get, not just so much necessarily even in courses, but from your fellow students, that you hang out with students majoring in so many different things, thinking about things in different ways, that I really view the 4 years in college as learning to think and with some focus. And I mean, a hard thing to do, and some universities are trying to go in many ways in an opposite direction there. And that comes back again to this whole idea of blockchain and its connectedness with the real world. In these policy and application-oriented classes, I deal with students with a broad range of political viewpoints. Students just off the plane from China who love DCEP, the Chinese digital currency, and students who are very much hardcore libertarian. And I need to challenge them both and try not to reveal my views, because that's not my job as an instructor. Yeah, some of my students probably know what I think about things, but that's for another time and place. And how do I work with finance people? The short answer, very carefully. Yes, token economics. Well, I mean, I think, case in point here with a colleague of mine in finance, Kathleen Hanley, we've been putting together like a little proposed policy paper on digital currency. We were working with a group trying to put together things for the then new administration. They didn't speed us up, they slowed us down, but we've really got a good, give and take going on there. Now, on the other hand, when she came to guest lecture in my class, and I said, well, in the last class, all of the students created their own ERC20 token, she was ready to pull out her cell phone and call her former colleagues in the SEC and put us all in striped pajamas until I added on the testnet. So, yeah, I mean, once you establish a good rapport and they realize I'm not really anarchist, I actually understand what they're doing, and that they also understand that the blockchain world is coming into their world, whether they like it or not, and might be a whole lot better if they understand it. Then we can start to explain things that are going on and to realize, that if we talk about a blockchain-based digital currency, well, there are other digital currencies out there. They're not on a blockchain, but airline miles. That's a digital currency. It's private, and so there's a continuum of choices, and we can create a degree of comfort in that way. And okay, the whole idea of anonymity, money laundering, and so forth. Yes, I mean, that's the other thing. Are we just simply promoting money laundering here? And I mean, we certainly talk about the fact that Bitcoin isn't really anonymous. You can, with a little bit of work, figure out who's probably behind a whole bunch of the various IDs, and point out that the best way to money launder is the US dollar. We're not talking about banning that as far as I know. And so we really need to think here about the broader infrastructure of finance, appropriate regulation, not over-regulation, and that this could actually be a more effective means to do that. And I've had lots of debates with students on those kinds of things. And Jimmy, did I miss any of the questions rolling through here?
No, I think you got them all, and I can't think of a better place to end it. Great job! I love that you went to town on the questions. Easy. Oh, I think we're fine. So there's another one that popped up.
Oh, is there? Oh, here we go.
What are your top 3 real life applications of blockchain?
Oh,
well, verifiable reference letters, right?
Oh, yeah. Obviously, Jimmy's project in Hawkeye. No, I mean, obviously, real life application of blockchain, I got to go with Corey and Adams, Decentralized Exchange Dolomite. Real proud of those 2 students. They were in my first blockchain course. They were sitting there, not paying any attention and just coding away. And I didn't care because I knew they were doing good things. And so, I mean, I'm really proud of the students we have who are out in the blockchain world making a difference. Those here, I've got a student with an offer from Coinbase. I got the students doing the decentralized exchange, some other students coming out with some really nice offers, but they're still figuring out what they're going to do. So I think in some ways, my personal favorite application of blockchain is helping to bring out the students who make blockchain and make it better.
I, as one of those students, can think of there's no better way to end the questions. That was amazing. Great presentation.
Thanks for having me here. It's been fun. And again, I want more feedback. hfk2@lehigh.edu. I'd love to hear from you.
Yes, please reach
Thanks.
out to him. And thank you so much, Professor. Awesome. Okay, so that concludes today's presentations. Thank you all for hanging with us. And please stick around. We're going to be networking and hanging out. And so, yeah, come hang with us. And we will see you tomorrow and the next day. We will be here. We're Chainsafe. We're hiring. Come join us and say hello. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.